Hey guys, welcome back to Serial at Midnight. This is the Serial at Midnight podcast, so I'm going to be talking to you about a few topics that are on my mind this week. I'm going to give you a review for The Monkey, directed by Osgood Perkins. It's in theaters as I'm recording this. It just opened. Now, Osgood Perkins is, of course, the director of Longlegs. This is his next movie, like 8 months after Longlegs. And The Monkey ends, if you stay through the credits, the post-credit scene is a tease for his next movie. So I don't know how this cat's cranking them out so fast, but he is really just like, here's 3 movies inside of, I don't know, like 16 months or something. I also want to talk about the release of Documentary Now on Blu-ray from Mill Creek Entertainment. I love this release. Documentary Now is a fake documentary series created by Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, top level honors, Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, and Seth Meyers, 3 Saturday Night Live alumni. It's produced by Lorne Michaels. It aired on IFC, I think, starting in 2015, maybe 2014, and it went for 4 seasons. And each episode is a fake documentary about a different topic, done in the style of a different documentary style. So, like, you've got the Dateline style, you've got the rock doc style, you've got the food documentary style. It is incredible, and I've been really enjoying this. So I wanted to talk about this. And then I also want to talk about this article that I read. I've been buying these used magazines. There's this magazine called Take One, and someone, I'll talk more about this when we actually do this, but there's an article in one of these magazines called The Psychopathology of the Film Buff. Now, this magazine is from 1979. And I was like, I got to read this article and I got to see how it stands up to what we think about the film buff today. What's changed in the last 45 years or so. So that's what we're going to cover in this episode. So let's kick it off with The Monkey. In theaters right now. I say that because I think it's very important to support movies in the theater whenever possible. There's something about that communal experience. There's also something about not having that communal experience ruined by someone being a jerk. But it is adapted from the Stephen King short story. When I was a kid, that was the paperback that had the monkey on the cover, the paperback cover, the little toy organ grinder monkey. The premise is it's a killer organ grinder monkey. Not physically, it is imbued with the power of evil, of death. And if you wind it up, somebody's going to die, and you do not get to choose who's going to die. And the movie really maximizes this idea of you wind it up, right? And like, you can wind it up and it doesn't immediately play the song, and it doesn't bang on the little drums. It does it on its own time. So like, you wind it up and then nothing happens. You're like, it's kind of like Death Note. But is Death Note based on The Monkey, the Stephen King story? I would actually be really interested to find that out. You wind it up and then you're like, I want so-and-so to meet this end. And then the monkey's not going to do what you want it to do because it's, this is itself a play on the monkey's paw idea. You get your wish, but it's not the wish. You get your wish answered, but not the way you want to. And there's always consequences, right? That's the thing. So that's probably the origin of it, is like it started in the Victorian era, filtered through Stephen King, then to Death Note. I don't know. But Osgood Perkins has really maximized the tension here, because you never know after you wind the thing up when it's going to play that creepy little organ grinder carnival type song and like tat, tat, tat on the drums, and then mayhem and carnage follows. But it's done in such a clever way, a fun way. The kill scenes in this movie are ridiculous, and they're so silly, and they're so over the top. Somebody in my comment section, maybe it was on social media, said that it reminded them of Final Destination. And I don't think it's tonally like Final Destination at all. Final Destination kind of freaked me out. This is a comedy. I mean, this is a really laugh out loud. It's intended to be funny. But I guess maybe the nature of the death scenes, like how elaborate they are, feels very similar to that. And I can get that. And I'm on board with that too. But I connect with this movie. Again, I don't think it's great. Let me be clear. Like, I don't think this is like a 5-star movie. First of all, I wouldn't know now anyway if it was, because we are wired for retrospect. Our brains are not made necessarily to appreciate the now. That's why everybody goes like, well, then it'll make them like they used to, because we look back. When you want to talk about the Oscars now, you might not enjoy the Oscars today. Maybe if you watch an episode of an Oscars from 10 years ago, then you might have enough perspective to be like, oh, that was actually a pretty good movie. We just seem wired to not be able to appreciate things in the now, to only appreciate them retroactively. But I don't think it's a timeless classic or anything like that. But it was a lot of fun, and especially after Longlegs, which I don't think I did not love Longlegs. I thought Longlegs was, well, first of all, kind of funny, and I don't think a lot of people picked up on that, or maybe that was a unique reaction, because I saw these people talking about how dark, like, finally, pure horror is. I was like, it's kind of a comedy, right? Because the thing that Nicolas Cage is doing in that movie is so silly. It's so over the top. There's also a conversation that we could have about whether horror works or doesn't work. I think maybe is requirement. Do you believe in it? Do you believe in the subject matter? Are you committed to the subject matter? For like horror movies about the Vatican, like the Omen movies, those don't work for me because I have no history with the Catholic Church. The idea of that whole system, that doesn't really do a lot for me because I'm like, well, I don't have the belief in that. But then other movies, like Rob Zombie movies kind of freak me out because he just throws like flashing lights and like loud music, and he overstimulates me to the point of horror. Like that's my horror, is overstimulation, I think. Longlegs is so in the shadow of Silence of the Lambs that it doesn't have its own identity. And that's something that I think even the director was very clear about. Even Osgood Perkins, who's the son of Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates from Psycho. So he's part of a horror dynasty. That's something he was very clear about in all the press around the Longlegs movie, is that like, yeah, I love Silence of the Lambs and I wanted to make a movie like that. Well, you did. You kind of made Silence of the Lambs again. But it could be this generation's Silence of the Lambs. I also think Silence of the Lambs is funny, so maybe that's just me. But this movie is legitimately funny. This movie is a straight up comedy. It's a dark comedy with crazy kill scenes and just the weirdest, most bizarre stuff. And I think it's fun, and I think people will enjoy it if they go check it out. I do have a review for this. I wrote a review for cerealatmidnight.com. It's on Letterboxd. It's at it's in the critics reviews on IMDb. I had a good time with it, and it made me excited about seeing the next Osgood Perkins movie, because now I'm starting to see, I'm like, oh, okay, I get what you're doing. And this movie has it does have a sense of identity. Like the font of the credits is straight up mid-60s Italian Western. It's not a Western film, but it's that font. There's the use of music. He uses these like 50s and 60s rhythm and blues songs, and those are very anachronistic to the tone of to the violence on screen, but it works. It's kind of like what John Landis does with An American Werewolf in London, using these jaunty songs to undercut horrible things that are happening on screen. And it just has a sense of whimsy to it more than anything. It feels whimsical. It's a whimsical horror movie. And a lot of that is in the source material. That's in Stephen King. Stephen King has a sense of whimsy in a lot of the stuff that he does too. So I don't know. I recommend it. Again, I can't say that, oh, you're going to love it. It's a great movie. But I think that there'll be something that you enjoy about The Monkey. And I would love, can I just say, I would love to have a replica of that monkey, and if I could wind it up and if it played that song and did the drum thing. Oh, here's the thing too, is like when it starts to play the drums, you're like, oh, it's on. And then if the drum is in the upright position and it hasn't come down on the drumstick is in the upright position and hasn't come down on the drum yet, the death is not over. It's not finished. There's more to come. So if the toy did that, like if I had the little replica and like it didn't finish, oh man, that would be creepy and cool all at the same time. It's fun. I think it's worth checking out. Documentary Now from Mill Creek Entertainment. I have had the best time watching these. I don't have IFC. I don't have cable, so that's why I don't have IFC. But these documentaries are just hilarious. And I'm not finished with the set, so there's some of the stuff that I haven't seen yet. But I just appreciate, there's the murder, like who really killed the the sign spinner outside the car wash. Who murdered the sign spinner? And they do the Blue Jean Committee, the rock doc about the Blue Jean Committee, and then I found out that they actually released Blue Jean Committee, the album. They mocked up the Blue Jean Committee album. On that episode, it's a fictional band, in the style of like Bread, I think, was maybe the core influence of the Blue Jean Committee, because it's like that California soft rock, like America, probably another big influence. But they got Cameron Crowe on camera. You know, I love Cameron Crowe. I mean, I love him for his movies, like Almost Famous is, of course, the big one. But then, I mean, I like Singles and Say Anything. But he's like the original, the Rolling Stone journalist. That's the story. That's his origin story. He was like a teenage journalist for Rolling Stone magazine, as seen in Almost Famous. And by the way, I got to see Heartbreakers Beach Party in the theaters. Was that late last year, late 2024, which he directed, about Tom Petty. It's a documentary about Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers that did not get distribution, and they put it back in theaters for 1 weekend only. It was 2 days. It was like one showing on Saturday, one showing on a Sunday, and then that was it. And it had an introduction or had like a new 15-minute talking head segment with Cameron Crowe and Tom Petty's daughter. Love Cameron Crowe. So he shows up in this Blue Jean Committee documentary. Again, this band isn't real. It's Fred Armisen and Bill Hader. And he's like, oh, I still have my Blue Jean Committee record. And then the camera follows Cameron Crowe into his music room. And it's just like, my movie shelves. It's like that. It's like wall to wall shelves with records, thousands and thousands of records. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is Cameron Crowe's record collection. And then he goes to the B's, and you can see how he's organized everything. It's like, this is the B section. And then he pulls out the Blue Jean Committee record. And then there's like a table in the middle of the room with different turntables on it. Like, I think at least 3 different turntables. I'm like, holy cow. So just even that element, love being such a fan of stuff, being a fan of pop culture and of music and these people. I don't know. It's done. All these documentaries are done with so much love and so much attention to detail that even if they're not funny, like laugh out loud, haha funny, they're so compelling that ceases to be the point. Okay, so there's one. By the way, Helen Mirren introduces all of these, and it's supposed to be like we start with the 50th season of Documentary Now, which is supposed to have been going since 1965. And she's like, "Hello, I'm Helen Mirren," and so like the one I think my favorite so far is Juan Likes Chicken and Rice, or Juan likes rice and chicken, and it's this documentary about a Colombian chef who has a little restaurant in the hills of Colombia. It's 40 minutes from the closest road. You have to hike to get to it. And the menu, it's a prefix menu with the meal. You get a cup of warm coffee. You get a banana cut in half. You get rice with butter on top of it. And maybe you'll get chicken as well. Sometimes there is no chicken because Juan did not catch the chicken that day. And it's silly, but also it is so realistically done. Like I think they really went to Colombia because they're in these marketplaces and there's like the beautiful vistas of the green hills and all this stuff. And it, even when it's not laugh out loud funny, it feels so authentic. And I found myself getting caught up in the story to the point that I didn't care that it was real. I was like, I just got to find out what. And there's like one of the sons has gone off and started a restaurant, like a huge mega restaurant called Diego's restaurant, Diego's Fun Restaurant. And he's like, you can get chicken, you can get beef. This is a Diego's. He's like, you can get chicken, you can get beef. We have tomato. You could get chicken and tomato. You could get chicken and rice. You could get chicken and Skittles. It's like the idea that there's this restaurant in the middle of Colombia and it's fun and everybody goes there. It's just a good story. And so there's human drama. My point is, these are so incredibly well observed that they're just great. There's one of them is about I think, is it in Denmark? I can't remember what nation it's in. That there's an Al Capone lookalike contest in this town, and so there's this guy like, who's going to win the Al? They feel so realistic, and they're not. But I don't know. It's so much fun. And then I mean, this package. This is the only thing Mill Creek put out for the month of, is this a February release or is this an early March release? I'm not sure. It's their only release for this month. I think it's a February release. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, I'm sorry. There is a video version where I'm showing this stuff, but it's got like the 4-panel fold out packaging, and it's got 4 discs. It's a 4-disc set. The stuff looks good. It's got mini posters. It's got these postcards with mini posters of the different episodes, and this is like, oh, hold on, this is just straight up Stop Making Sense, right? This is just Talking Heads. This one is The Kid Stays in the Picture. It's just straight up ripping off The Kid Stays in the Picture, the Robert Evans documentary. We got Owen Wilson, Jack Black's in this. I mean, there's a lot of people in these, and Cameron Crowe, as I mentioned, like famous chefs. David Chang, if you know who that chef is, he's in the Juan Likes Rice and Chicken episode. It's genius. Okay, there's also, oh my goodness, I want to talk about this episode. What is this episode called? This episode is called, hold on, this booklet. It comes with a booklet too, including, there's the Blue Jean Committee, including a new introduction, a written introduction from Fred Armisen. So a ton of love here. Canuck Uncovered. That's it. Canuck Uncovered. Supposed to be an expose of, let's see, this riff on the classic Nanook of the North details a director's struggle to maintain control of his film as his Inuit star grows more demanding. So I'm not going to spoil this whole thing for you, but it's like they made this silent film in the 1920s about Canuck, this native person, and he gets more savvy. And like over the course of the documentary, the Inuit character takes over the production, and he's like inventing sets, and he's inventing like the dolly shot and like all the stuff that didn't exist in the 1920s. My point being that it is well informed. These guys know their movie. Have you ever seen Bill Hader on? He's all over the Criterion Channel. I've been watching the Criterion Channel. I told you guys to subscribe to the Criterion Channel streaming service. Bill Hader is like, I mean, he is something else. He is a film fan extraordinaire. That's going to lead me into my film buff conversation. But he's got copies of, there's like a little feature with him on Preston Sturges on the Criterion Channel. He's got like a copy of Preston Sturges screenplays, like a paperback copy of Preston Sturges screenplays with the different colored post-it notes demarking different pages. Like, he's serious about this stuff, and he really knows his film history. So all that to say, these are incredibly well informed. They're just smart. And if you're a film buff, and you are because you're watching this, and you haven't seen any of these, I think you'll enjoy them. I think they're fun. 2 hours of bonus materials, IFC Emmy panel discussion, behind the scenes featurettes, deleted scenes, trailers and promos. And we've got those 8 mini posters. We've got a 28 page booklet with the introduction by Fred Armisen. Super fun. Fred Armisen is touring right now, and he's going to be coming through my town in about a month, and I gotta go. And if I have, I'm like, do I take this with me and hope that I see him? I'm like, Fred, would you autograph Documentary Now? He probably, these guys do their sets and then just like run out the back, so probably not. But it's got me really, I'm loving it. Okay, so I did not know this magazine existed. This is Take One Magazine. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. Someone that I follow on Instagram posted about this. They were like, oh, I love to find Take One magazines whenever I can. And I had no idea what that was. And they actually showed this article, The Pathology of the Film Buff. And I was like, I have to read that article. So I've been buying these lots on eBay of Take One magazine. I've got This one has, let's see, Stalking the Deer Hunter, an interview with Michael, is it Cimino? Hollywood East, the young book to film czars. Psychopathology, the film buff. Candid discussion with George Lucas in 1979. Even the Wolfman Loves Popcorn. Okay, here's another one with Diane Keaton on the cover. Here's one with Woody Allen. And a quote that says, "Art is the intellectual's Catholicism, is the promise of an afterlife." Of course, it's all fake. Here's one about Disney. Sound, the second half of the century. The Jazz Singers, Jessel versus Jolson. So I was like, well, I gotta have these. And so I've been picking them up. Some of them go for a lot of money. So it's slow going, but I'm happy with the ones that I have so far. This is like a Canadian printed magazine printed in Toronto. So that would explain why I did not even know about it. But this article really, I wanted to read. I've highlighted, if you can see, I've highlighted certain things that I want to talk about here, because it is both accurate in some aspects. Again, written in 1979, it's accurate, but it's also kind of damning. And I don't know how I feel, but I'm wrestling with some of this stuff, because some of them I'm like, well, that's true, that held up, and some of it doesn't. So this was written by Patricia Goldstone, who is now, I believe, she works at the LA Times, the Los Angeles Times. She's a journalist, she's a playwright, she's still creating, still writing stories, but this was 1979. So think about where we were in 1979 in terms of film fandom, pre-home entertainment, really. You might be able to have a 16 millimeter print, but Betamax is not really a thing yet. VHS is not really a thing yet. So your film fandom is going to largely consist of going to screenings or catching things on television or having, 8 millimeter or 16 millimeter. So I'm going to skip ahead to some of the parts that really stuck out to me. What distinguishes a film buff from someone who simply loves going to the movies? Is buffery a hobby, a vocation, a stage of development, or pathology? The answer to anyone familiar with the dim underworld of the second-run movie house usually involves all four. On the simplest and most innocuous level, buffery is knowledge. A fan is not informed outside of data on his or her particular star, says Charles Hyam, noted film star biographer. A buff knows everything about the whole film in terms of lists of credits and what went into its making. Critic Pierre Sauvage agrees. It's not enough to see a movie a lot. The real film buff has to read film books and critical magazines. The term film buff has taken on increasingly pejorative connotations. Buffs are people who have made a fanatical career out of knowing everything about film and nothing about anything else, greats critic John Simon, whose abhorrence of the species is said to amount to phobia. So that right there, that's our first shot fired. Buffs are people who have made a fanatical career out of knowing everything about film and nothing about anything else. Okay, we can discuss that. But then it's going to go on. It says, and in America, at least, the film buff is also identified with grooming habits, here we go, that indicate a low level of self-esteem, bad skin, bad teeth, obesity, and or malnutrition, and the aura of the unwashed. As Woody Allen says, at least you don't have to look your best. So I was both offended by this, and I was also like, well, I mean, now we could evolve that to any fandom, really, any subculture, because it's a common joke, right? That when you go to a comic book convention, that nobody's wearing deodorant because everybody, like all those fanboys, stink. And I know this from firsthand. I've been there. I've had conversations with people where they're like, hey, before you go to the con, remember, take deodorant. Don't be one of those people. This seems innately true. I don't know if we've evolved beyond it yet. What do you think? But in France, the cradle of cinephilia, Film studies is as respectable as Latin or Greek, and it's classical. One thing that distinguishes the French film buff from his American counterpart is the European educational system, comments Sauvage, who spent his university years immersed at the Cinémathèque and at the offices of Carrières du Cinéma. It's much more demanding than our own. The French buff, as a rule, is also a literature buff, a music buff, a theater buff. Another difference is parochialism. The French buff knows American films backwards and forwards, whereas American buffs, especially West Coast buffs, tend to ignore European films. This is I think this is interesting too. The idea that in America, film buffery is low, but of course the French named film noir. They observed the style in the post-war. During World War II, they're not getting access to American films. And then after World War II, all these B movies start showing up in France, and they're observing that they're so much darker than the pre-war films, and they name them film noir. The European nations steeped in American film, but Americans not necessarily steeped in international film. Now, this is something I'm always trying to be more aware of, is to watch more Italian films and French films and international cinema, all of it, to not just be. I mean, Hollywood pictures are my entree into that conversation. That's the thing that ignited the fire. But then seeing how those styles were adopted by other people, right? That's really interesting to me. You look at something like Francis Ford Coppola. You look at Megalopolis. Okay, now that movie was obviously not a critical success or a commercial success. But when I watch Megalopolis, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the guy that was steeped in French New Wave and in the counterculture films of the 1960s, doing it himself. And he's kind of always been doing it himself, but that circular, like, we feed that art feeds our art, and it's a circular kind of a thing. But I think you could still say that there's a lot of first of all, there's a lot of American movie buffs that are only watching horror, which is interesting. Limiting, but interesting. And if they are film buffs, to back up the statement that a buff knows everything about the whole film, but just a lot about this one thing, but not a lot about anything else. Like, this is a very micro-focused thing. Through the efforts of Francois Truffaut and other Cinémathèque graduates, championship of the American B-movie became a cornerstone of cinephilia. American film buffery is basically an East Coast phenomenon, maintains a chauvinistic corliss. A true film buff culture can't exist in an out-of-door climate like California. And then the author of this article says it can, and it does. LA has a flourishing umbrella culture. This can be illustrated by the way in which each group views bees, talking about the different coasts now. This is the first time I've seen somebody pit the two different coasts as being different kinds of film fandom. And again, I wonder if this idea has survived over the last 45 years or so. Although it sometimes carries it to extremes, the European and the New Yorker tend to interpret the action of the bees in a broader social context as evidence of an anarchic sensibility, both terrifying and enchanting, the ultimate political fantasy of life in America. The California film buff, perhaps as a child of pop culture, tends to interpret what he sees on a personal and primal and essentially uncritical level. Okay, they're saying, this article again, that the New York audience is viewing films in a larger societal context, political and societal context, and that the West Coast film buff is largely uncritical and looking at it purely as pop culture. Is that still true? In some ways it feels like maybe it is. B-movies had all the good stuff when you were a kid. All the monsters, the stuntmen, the fights, says a rising young producer who wishes to remain anonymous because he has just been hired by a major studio and has to appear as a person of substance. Has to appear. Who is this person? I would love to know who this is. This person says, A movies were full of people talking. I couldn't relate to Robert Stack having a love affair with someone. I could only relate to Spider-Man. Who is this? I want to know who this is, because this person became, if they were a producer a rising producer in 1979, was it Spielberg? Surely not. This person has created the zeitgeist as it exists right now. They reference Spider-Man decades before, 21 years before we had a Spider-Man, 22 years before we had a Spider-Man movie. The buff is at heart a collector. A film buff collects fantasy experiences, says Maisel. Our society, being materialistic, would rather our fantasies were objectified in financial gain, like rare cars, our stamps, our butterflies. Okay, the idea that the film buff is a collector, holy cow, that is so true. And it's something I've been pushing back against here on my channel for years now. Being like, just because it's like when people go like, oh, if you're a real fan, why don't you have hundreds of Criterion Collection discs on your shelf? And this idea of like the monetization of it, the capitalistic expression of it, you know, the materialism of it is what really qualifies your fandom. We're still dealing with that all these years later. And you got to remember, this was written at a time when you really could not buy your movies. You could, I mean, there was like video CDs, I guess, at that point, or, you know, the CEDs at that point. But you really could not own your movies like we can now, and there was still a problem. Like, the materialism was still a problem. Most film buffs, unless they can manage to parlay their obsession into a living, seem to hold down minimal jobs. This makes the directors they venerate uncomfortable around them. Industry people, as a rule, work very hard, notes Savage. They don't like being around people who aren't doing the same thing. It's very hard as a film buff to do anything except carp or grovel. That one hit me. I was like, is that true? Do film buffs just grovel? It's probably unfair to judge a sincere infatuation with the creativity of others by the standards of sometimes crassly pragmatic industry. Not everyone has talent, and as Hayam says, we need our audiences. What would we do without them? Theoretically, at least, film buffery has some of the charms of the 19th century dandyism, a love of artifice for its own sake. That goes back to the idea of loving movies purely as pop culture and not for the societal and sociological statements of that film. Just the idea that it's a love of artifice. And that's kind of true. Film is an escape. Film is an outlet for so many of us. They're going to double down on that. Listen to this. But the majority of buffs seem to use movies as a prophylactic. Truffaut details how, as Howard Hughes withdrew from reality, his movie habits grew and grew. It is easier as an adolescent to hide in a darkened movie house than to face pimples, wet dreams, and rejection. It is also easier to survive indefinitely on the predigested life experiences of others. The danger is that one may never develop any teeth of one's own. Man. Critic Andrew Saris once declared that his critical personality is inescapably neurotic because the cinema has always been at least partially a substitute for his own unfulfilled sexuality. It's okay for an adolescent, says Savage. When you get into your 20s, you should be able to form ideas and relationships of your own. He cites his marriage as one of the reasons for leaving the film buff world. I used to hate going home, he said. I don't anymore. That's the end of the article, and that is a powerful conclusion. Now look, obviously there's a lot of blanket statements in that article, but I don't know. I see so much, somebody once commented, this was kind of recently, when I was talking about the materialism of the film collectors, and I was like, guys, what does the movie mean to you? Let's talk about the art of the movie and what it's trying to tell us and what we connect with from a performance level. And somebody was like, yeah, I just like to buy the movies because they're my escape. Because women, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, and I think it was he said, I've been spurned by women. I have no meaningful relationships, and movies offer me an escape by which I can basically live in this sort of fantasy life. I have no conclusions on this. I just wanted to share the article because it is thought-provoking, and I think some of it applies even now. Are we connecting with the art? Or are we connecting with the artifice? That's really the ultimate question, and it's going to be a different answer for different people. But sobering, man. This is a sobering article, and I'm glad I read it. I like the weightier look at now it's just like, oh, I love movies. And it's so easy because it's everywhere. You've got 26,000 streaming services. It's fireside. There's something on all the time. But you used to have to kind of work at it. But even now we don't have to work at it to see stuff. What does it mean? What is that? There's so much here. The psychopathology of the film buff. Where do you fall? You don't have to tell me. Just something to think about. Guys, thank you for hanging out with me. I want to encourage you to I don't know, to love movies, to watch movies and tell me what you think about them. The goal, always the goal of Serial at Midnight was to share my love of the arts and hope that it would open doors to more meaningful conversations about the stuff that we love, not just consumerism. And it was to my great heartbreak that videos about materialism bypassed everything else that I did, bypassed the views of me talking about movies and what I loved about them. But I will say, this last month or so, as I've been leaning into these deeper conversations about my fandom, so many of you guys, thousands of you guys have been supportive. You have been like, oh, this is what we want from you. This is what we were hoping. You inspire me. That's so encouraging. We don't need more people selling products. We need more people connecting with art and talking about why they love it. Because I believe that that's what brought us all to the table. Even if it was just seeing something when we were young that like widened our eyes and blew doors off of our brains to things that we didn't realize were possible. That's the imagination. That's film acting as a gateway to take us to other places, to opening the door. Film is opening a door that we can then step through and continue that journey. And I think that's something that, I'm thinking of all the things that people have told me over the years. It's people saying like, well, this commercial movie was really meant to open a door to get you into, like Star Wars. John Spira told me, that the filmmaker behind The Life and Deaths of Christopher Lee, that I interviewed here, told me, he was like, he made a documentary called Elstree 1976 about the people in England who were like ancillary background actors in Star Wars, like the people that, like maybe people inside the costumes, right? And he said, George Lucas made Star Wars because he wanted people to then see that and to inspire them on their own journeys. And then they would go read Isaac Asimov, and they would go read Frank Herbert, and they would start to develop they would take a larger journey. And he's like, but so many people have just doubled down on Star Wars, and it starts and ends with Star Wars. And they have Star Wars tattoos, and they worship at the Church of the Jedi or whatever. He's like, it was supposed to be a gateway, but people haven't walked through the door. Some people haven't walked through the door. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because it's so true. And it was about me. I related to that for so long. When I could have been reading, and I did eventually go on and read Asimov and Frank Herbert. I've struggled with Dune. I haven't finished Dune, the books. I got to try that again as an adult. But Star Wars was just like a holding pattern for me for a long time. And I read like 200 of the books. And it's only now as I'm a little bit older, I'm like, I could have been reading all these authors. I could have been reading, Ray Bradbury, and, there's so much out there that Star Wars could have launched me toward, but I stayed in this one place. And it's not a judgment. Again, I'm talking about me. These things could open doors for us to take, like art can open doors to take us to different places. And that's beautiful. That's incredibly beautiful, right? So I don't know, I'm rambling. That's where my heart's at. And that's what I want to convey with this channel, while still doing the occasional physical media video. Because, physical media is cool, but it is ultimately just a key to a door. I hope we're walking through the door. Please do, if you want to support Serial at Midnight, there's a variety of different ways you can do it. You can use our Amazon link. I say our, it's my. You can use my Amazon links in the description of this and every episode. If you use the Amazon link, anything you buy through Amazon, I get a commission off of that. It's like 2%, but you know, it all adds up, and that's one way to support the channel with shopping that you're already going to be doing. I know Amazon's not great. I would never encourage you to go with Amazon over a boutique, you know, but if you're going to do it anyway, if there's something that they have, you know, I'm trying to minimize how much I support some of these big box retailers because they've undeniably made things worse. I buy, you know, a $100 box set and they ship it in an envelope. Like, what have you done? And it arrives just shattered, right? And then, you know, we know, but that's a way you can support Serial at Midnight. You can also become a member through YouTube. You can become a member for $5. You can become a member through Patreon. Each of those have unique benefits. There's a lot of overlap there. So either one of them is a good choice for supporting Serial at Midnight. What else? You know what else you can do? You can, where's this stuff? If you are looking for storage solutions, I am currently partnered with Terrafold. I'm an affiliate for Terrafold, and let's just grab a random one. Oh, here's Mind Warp and Brain Scan, the Mill Creek Entertainment double feature, which I have sleeved. Can you see that it is a wafer thin? Oh, I want to do this on camera. Somebody told me, they were like, those sleeves are great, but they get sludge all over your discs. How are you sleeving these that your disc is even touching the sleeve? First of all, these plastic sleeves. So here, I will okay, I'm taking it out. I have to open the flap. I have now removed the paper art wrap. And inside of every one of these, I have put my Blu-ray or my DVD, whatever, in a CD sleeve, a paper CD sleeve. Terrafold has things outside of this. You can get, you know, they're more expensive, but they have like padded sleeves and stuff like that. You get 1,000 of these for like $20 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And that was the best option for me. So I always put them in the sleeve, then I wrap them in the art wrap, and then I slide them into the sleeve. And because I'm a lifelong comic book collector and a record collector, this just works for me. This is what I already know. This is what I've been doing my whole life. And so I can just, you know, come flip for what I'm looking for. But everything I talk about, when I talk about these alternate storage solutions, this is all going to be available at the Terrafold website. That link is in the description, as is the code CAM15, which saves you 15%. But if you use that link, I get a commission off of that. So you're supporting Serial at Midnight. You're saving some money, and that's another way to support the channel. Give me, I should also mention, I'm about to list a bunch more stuff on eBay. Generally, I try to put up a few dozen things at a time, and then I let those sell down, get it all shipped out, take it all to the post office, and then I list more stuff once that's gone. I'm very busy right now with commentary research, editing, and I've slowed down on eBay, but keep your eyes peeled to that eBay store because I will be putting things up there. If you go to my eBay store, again, linked in every video. Or podcast. If you go to the eBay store and you don't see anything there, just wait, it's coming soon. Send me your topics if there's something that you want me to talk about. If you want my take on something, I'm wide open to topics for these. This is just you and me shooting the breeze about being fans of art and pop culture and movies and toys. We can talk about toys, comic books, science fiction, novels. I love it all. I have a really wide range of interests. Movies are kind of the thing that get the most engagement from you guys, but I'm an OG geek from a long time ago. You know, I had Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan on Betamax. Okay, so I go back with this stuff. Thank you guys. I appreciate you very much. Until next time, I will catch you later.